So as we've discussed in the past, there is no greater motivator to upgrade your equipment than pain. Searing, intense, endless pain. And there are 4 things that were causing me a great deal of pain and friction in my post-production workflow here in my studio. Those 4 things are: 1. I need to separate Final Cut Pro and Safari from my Mac Pro system sounds. Huh? I know, I'll explain soon. 2. I need to be able to watch my Apple TV on my preview monitor, obviously. 3. I need to be able to send my preview monitor video to the 4K TV in my home theater. And 4. I need to be able to have control of all of my home theater components as well as what's displayed on my preview monitor, controlled from the Shortcuts app on an iPad. And this one is the most complicated. Now for some of you this is just too complicated and too technical to grab your attention, and I understand. A lot of it was too technical even for me. For others, this is your dream video, doing a deep dive into a very complicated Edit Bay upgrade. Regardless of how you feel about content like this, I hope you'll join me as we journey into the glorious 2-week saga that has been my biggest studio upgrade to date. So let's start with separating Final Cut Pro and Safari from the overall system audio on my Mac Pro. So on your computer, the volume controls everything: Final Cut, Logic Pro, Safari, the music app, podcast, system sounds, inbound FaceTimes. And there's no way to separate how you control the sound levels for each of those things. But what if you want to have the volume on Final Cut Pro really high, but keep the volume for the system sounds in Safari much lower? Because I spend so much time in Final Cut editing dialogue, music, sound effects, I need to be able to control the volume levels of that app independently of all the other apps and system sounds on my computer. So as technical as I am with a lot of things, something like this is a bit above my pay grade. Why? Because as far as I can tell, I'm going to need to add a digital mixer to my Edit Bay to solve this problem. You see this a lot on the desks of the real pros, and although they may not be using it the same way I intend to use it, there are a lot of similarities. Now, a digital mixer is most commonly used in the music industry for recording music. Live in concert, in studios, you get the idea. But I need to adapt this tool to my needs in my Edit Bay. Because this is above my pay grade, I need to call in the big guns for help, and the big guns are Nick Militello. Now, Nick has been a friend of mine since college. We were both in theater school together at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I was an acting student and Nick was in the lighting program. When I moved to LA in 2008, Nick hired me to edit concert video content for his clients at the time. New Kids on the Block and So You Think You Can Dance. And that's where I really cut my teeth as a video editor and post-production person. So Nick taught me a ton of new stuff, and a lot of the foundations of what he taught me, I'm actually teaching all of you. Since those early days, I've worked with Nick on 2 short films that he directed and live touring shows ranging from Trans-Siberian Orchestra to Joan Jett and the Blackhearts to Jennifer Lopez and even Gwen Stefani. Now, Nick still lives in LA while I'm here in the Omaha area, but we are constantly talking shop about Apple, Final Cut Pro, post-production, and filmmaking. Nick also has a YouTube channel that he's just started. I'll link to his first video above and in the description below. So when I told Nick that I had a problem, we immediately got to work on creating a blueprint for how we would get more control of the audio in my Edit Bay. Now, before we get into all that, I want to tell you about a few other pain points I've had in my Edit Bay, so let's head over there so I can break it all down for you. So I know the setup's a little awkward, but I just want to show how I can switch from using Final Cut to the preview monitor with the AV output to switching to my Apple TV. A lot of times when I edit, I like to have the Apple TV on where I'm watching a show or just have something playing quietly in the background while I work, especially a lot of assistant editing like logging footage. So I'm editing, just sitting here kind of going through my stuff, and I decide I want to watch Apple TV. So I can just press on the Shortcuts app here, switch to Apple TV with one button push, and you'll see the input change to the Apple TV. So I've got my screensaver up, and I can get out and I can go check out whatever apps I want, watch whatever I want, and my app for the Apple TV works perfectly. So if I want to switch back, I've decided I'm not going to watch anything on the Apple TV and I have somebody coming over, like a client, and they need to watch what's being edited on the preview monitor, I can just switch to Final Cut. And after a few seconds, we're back up and running. All right, so this is the home theater area of my studio. I have a couch over here, coffee table, a place for clients to sit, and then a 55-inch 4K television over here with a stereo receiver and some bookshelf speakers. There's some rear speakers over here so you can get a little bit of a surround sound effect, even though most of the stuff that we're going to show is in stereo. Now, normally if I want to screen something that I'm working on with a client, I would have to export that video, put it up on something like Vimeo or even YouTube unlisted, and then play it through my Apple TV on the television. That can take a lot of time to export that video and get it ready to screen. What I'd rather be able to do is send the video output signal from my Mac Pro, the preview monitor, to the 4K television so that it can play both behind the edit bay and on the television. The client can sit back, watch the video, and I can hang back in the edit. If there's notes, we need to stop, whatever we need to do. All right, so here is the other pain point in my entire setup. I've got all these remotes. So I have a remote for the receiver, the television, and the Apple TV. Now the Apple TV remote I'm probably not going to take out of the equation, but I don't want to have to find these remotes to be able to control the home theater from my edit bay. And I certainly don't want these on my desk in order to do so. So I want to be able to use my iPad to sort of transfer these remotes to an application that will allow me to control all of the components of the home theater. For stuff like the deep menus, like getting into the TV menus and settings, things like that, I'm not going to program the iPad app to do that. It's just for simple controls like volume control, turning it off and on, switching inputs, things like that. So you can see what we're dealing with here. And Nick and I had to engineer a blueprint for a setup that would solve all of these pain points. So we busted out our trusty Affinity Designer apps and got to work. Nick sketched out his first thoughts, I cleaned it up. A few revisions and reviewing gear on Amazon, we came up with what we thought was the plan. So I ordered a bunch of stuff on Amazon, HDMI cables, RCA cables, 3.5mm headphone jack to male XLR, 1/4-inch headphone jack to female XLR, a couple of iPads on eBay, a digital mixer, an HDMI matrix, an audio extractor, and a bunch of other stuff to just get this job done. So the first thing I did was I hooked up the Behringer XR12 and the M Audio input thing. The M Audio was going to allow us to get a USB signal into the computer because for some reason the XR12 doesn't allow this. A $350 digital mixer with Wi-Fi won't let you connect to a computer via USB. And little did we know that this seemingly small issue we were trying to work around was going to bring this entire installation to its knees. Nick suspected this was going to cause problems, but he kept the faith that we'd be able to figure it out. So we continued connecting cables back and forth from the home theater to the edit bay. Now some of you may be curious to hear about the plan in greater detail, so let's review. To control the audio of various apps on the computer, and to be able to use my Rode NTG2 as a mic for things like Zoom calls, recording voiceovers, doing live streams on YouTube, we needed a digital mixer. So we went with the Behringer XAir XR12 because it uses an iPad app for its main interface, and the unit itself that takes all the audio inputs and outputs can be tucked away under the desk and out of view. The XAir XR12 has great Midas preamps, so when I do want to capture audio or use the mic versus the Mac Pro's mic, I can put a compressor and a limiter on it through the mixer, which is awesome. And because this mixer doesn't have USB connectivity with a computer, we had to throw in this M Audio M-Track Duo to allow for that. Long story short, these two devices together were causing a feedback loop, and the only way around it was to return the XR12 and upgrade to the XR18 because it would give us the USB connectivity to the Mac Pro that we needed. So I ordered the XR18, returned the XR12, and a few days later, Nick and I got back to work. Now, at the same time, we're also getting all the video signals routed so that I can watch my Apple TV on my preview monitor, as well as output my preview monitor to the home theater for screening edits, reviewing sound mixes, normal post-production stuff for a company like Midland Pictures. So how do you do that? Well, a lot of folks turn right to Blackmagic and look at their fairly expensive SDI-based routers, where they use Blackmagic adapters to adapt HDMI to SDI. I didn't quite have the budget for that, so Nick designed me a setup similar to his own using something called an HDMI matrix. An HDMI matrix, simply put, allows you to route video signals between multiple devices. So if you want your Mac Pro video input to route to a preview monitor and a 4K television at the same time, this lets you do that. Now, to get audio from an HDMI device into a digital mixer like an XR18, you need to extract the audio signal from the HDMI using an extractor. This Extractor hardware will allow you to, in essence, take audio through HDMI and then output the audio from that connection over RCA. RCA is then adapted to XLR or quarter-inch to go into the XR18. So our setup went a little something like this. HDMI matrix in the middle, Apple TV, Sony receiver, and a 4K TV on one end, and the Mac Pro, the preview monitor, and the XR18 on the other. So we routed the Apple TV through the audio extractor via HDMI to the Sony receiver. We sent a 50-foot run of HDMI from the Sony receiver to the first input on the HDMI matrix, and that was that. On the edit bay side, we used HDMI from the Mac Pro into the second input on the HDMI matrix. We connected the preview monitor to the first output on the HDMI matrix, and then routed a 50-foot HDMI cable from the second output on the HDMI matrix to the HDMI input on the 4K TV in the home theater. Luckily, all of that was really easy. The only issue we had was some HDMI cables that weren't long enough. I ordered 6-footers when I really needed a few 10-footers. So we returned a few and ordered some new ones and got all that hooked up pretty easily. So now we have all the video connected, but because we had to swap the XR12 for the XR18, we still had a lot of work to do to get the audio up and running. Luckily, with the XR18, you can use the desktop app combined with screen sharing to let your friend who knows way more about this than you do take the bridge and pilot the ship. So Nick worked with me to cable all of the audio inputs and audio outputs and buses, as well as customize the UI to fit my needs. Now, in order to tell the Mac Pro to treat specific apps as its own separate audio output to the XR18, we needed to use a handy little app called Audio Hijack. This app allows you to do a ton of audio programming and customization, and it was exactly what we needed to tell the Mac Pro to treat Final Cut Pro, Safari, and System Audio as separate audio outputs. This would allow me to have a fader that controls the volume for Final Cut, one for Safari, and one for the Mac Pro's System Audio. Now, once I purchased the software and Nick got it all set up, we tried it out, and miraculously, it all worked. The only issue we're having right now is that when the Apple TV is put to sleep, we're still getting noise over the speakers, my studio monitors. This shouldn't be happening, so we need to troubleshoot it to figure out why. I just haven't done that yet because this upgrade project has taken more than 2 weeks to implement, and I have a lot of stuff that I need to get done. So you can see on the app that I have a fader that controls Final Cut, one for Safari, one for the Apple TV when I'm watching it on the preview monitor and I'm listening over my studio monitors. I've got one for the Mac Pro's System Audio. Again, that's notification sounds, FaceTime calls. I've got one for my mic for Zoom meetings, live streaming, recording temp voiceovers, and another one for a vlog input for when I record a video for the channel when I'm not sitting here at my desk and still want to run a mic into the mixer to record directly to Logic Pro. And then there's an FCP mix that doesn't have a compressor or gate on it. There's a fader for controlling the audio that's sent to the receiver during screenings, and another one for when I want to route audio from all of these sources to my AirPods. I haven't set that up yet, but plan to soon. So remember when I talked about having all of those remotes to control the Apple TV, the receiver, and the TV? Solving that was going to be a big task. But before I could set up the apps that I'd need to run this system, I needed an iPad. I scored a used iPad Mini 2 on eBay for $110, and I picked up another Mob Armor magnet mount so I could have it mounted to the desk in a way that made it really easy to use. Drill a few holes in your desk and route a special 90-degree angle lightning cable, and you're all set. So there's an app for the iPad called Simple Control that lets you program remote commands for devices that use infrared. Now, devices that can only use infrared are a little bit harder to set up, whereas devices that have an Ethernet connection or connect over Wi-Fi are much easier to set up with this app. Now, for the Simple Control app to talk to your home theater components over Wi-Fi, you need something called a Wi-Fi to IR module. We opted for Global Cache's WF2IR ITAC. Now, getting all of this programmed was the absolutely hardest part of the entire process. The Simple Control app is really anything but simple when you factor in the conversion of infrared to Wi-Fi across multiple devices. I will say that after a few hours of trial and error, it started to become clear how all of this worked, and I got pretty good at using the settings, devices, and activities menus to program the various commands. So I needed to program the app to control the HDMI matrix as well, because I wanted to very easily be able to switch my preview monitor from Final Cut to my Apple TV. I also wanted to be able to control turning on the Apple TV, putting it to sleep, turning the TV on and off, turning the TV volume up and down, and turning the receiver on and off its volume up and down, and switching inputs between the Apple TV and eventually an over-the-air antenna and my PlayStation 4. Now, not only did I want to be able to program the Simple Control app To let me control these devices, I wanted to use the app to set up using Siri to control the devices in order to then use the Shortcuts app to simply push a button and control everything. Not only that, but I wanted to be able to automate a lot of this in conjunction with the Home app so that, for example, every day at 7:30 a.m. my studio lights turn on, the Apple TV turns on, and my preview monitor is set to input the Apple TV. And then when I'm done working for the day, I can say, "Hey, S, turn off the studio," and all the lights and components will turn off or go to sleep. I mean, who doesn't want that kind of control using Siri? So I spent almost the entire weekend programming the Simple Control app and then the Shortcuts app to do exactly that. One wrinkle was that my iPads are iPad mini 2s and the last iOS they support is iOS 12. The Shortcuts app on iOS 12 is vastly different than iOS 14, and iOS 14 shortcuts won't work on iOS 12, but iOS 12 shortcuts will work on iOS 14. So with that kind of one-way street and trying to get the Simple Control app to create Siri shortcuts that the iOS 12 app could see was a bit tricky. But I got it all to work and everything is doing exactly what I want it to. Except the receiver. The IR blaster that comes with this global cache thing doesn't seem to be working, or I don't know how to work it, so I need to run a 50-foot IR emitter from the edit bay to the home theater and put the IR transmitter directly on the IR receiver on the receiver. And once I do that, I'll be able to control the receiver using the Shortcuts app. So that's it. That's the big 2021 studio upgrade. Of course, there are a few wrinkles to sort out and a few components left to install, but my objective with the computer's audio and the routing of video between my two systems has been achieved. And most importantly, I learned a ton. I don't know if all of you evaluate your workflows for points of friction or inefficiencies and pain. I didn't always think of it that way, and there are still areas where I just put up with friction because I'm either unaware of a solution, maybe sometimes too lazy to figure out if there is one, or in some instances just have budget limitations. I'll use this video to challenge all of you out there to think about areas where there's friction in your workflow. Things that bother you that you wish you could figure out a solution for. Maybe it's this channel that helps you, or someone you know who's like Nick who just takes the time to figure out what tools exist that will allow you to reduce friction in your life. Maybe to automate things or to solve simple problems that interfere with your ability to simply make stuff. To pursue your passion, to do what you love to do most, like me, create. If you're still watching, I'm sure you're exhausted. I know I am. I can't thank you all enough for being a part of this community and watching my content. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. I'd love to help if I can. But that's going to be it for this one. So until the next one, I'll see you all soon.
Conversation.